Okay. I got the report today that Michael has come down with COVID.
Oh no.
So he's not, apparently he's not joining us. He said he was skeptical that he could, so it looks like he's not. Okay, so if you've got this book, we start with these prayers. So the opening prayers. So everybody mute your microphones, please, but recite along with me. And this sets our intention for the practices, for the teachings, and so on, that we are doing this for the benefit of enlightenment of all sentient beings. So we begin on page 1 with the altruistic motivation. So we'll do this 3 times in English. We'll continue in English for tonight. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience. May they experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly I will establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. Next prayer is the action Bodhicitta prayer. We recite this one time. Bodhicitta is the holy enlightened mind. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Next is the long refuge prayer. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities and the mandalas of the Yanas. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. We take refuge in the kind root and lineage lamas. We take refuge in the deities and the mandalas of the Yanas. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. We take refuge in the kind root Lama and lineage Lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the Yanas. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. Next, this is taking the Bodhisattva vow. So the Bodhisattva is a holy enlightened being who is on the path to become a Buddha. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Now the short refuge prayer, the three jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The Buddha, or Om, Ah, Hom. The Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The body, speech, and mind of the Buddha. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. And the final opening prayer is page 6, the four immeasurables. These are the four vast, immeasurable qualities of bodhicitta. And bodhicitta is the holy enlightened mind of all the enlightened ones. And we have the potential for that all within ourselves. So we recite this prayer to remind us of these four immeasurable qualities, which are loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions about the opening prayers?
I have a question about the prayer.
Yes, go ahead, Anna. And then Michael will come back to you. Go ahead, Anna.
If I wanted to learn how to voice all of these prayers in Tibetan, how would I go about learning the correct pronunciations?
Well, I can send you e-files that you can hear. I can send you the ones that I've done, and also I can send you ones that the lamas have done. So you can learn it, from them, who is official. And so I think that would be a very good way to do that. If you would send me an email reminding me, ask me to do that, and that way I'll have your email address and I will send them to you very soon.
I'll do that. Thank you, Lance.
Okay.
Lance, can I do this prayer every day?
Absolutely.
In the morning or something like that? Or
well, the morning is the best time to do it, yes, but any time of day is fine.
Okay, thank you.
Are you thinking of doing all these prayers that we just recited?
I'm not sure. I was thinking either the water offering or this.
Well, okay, we'll talk about that. I think this, as you do the water offering, would be perfect.
Okay.
So I think that would be the simple thing to do. And ultimately, it's best to as our first primary practice is to memorize these prayers. So, if you have beads, if you have, these are called mala beads, but they're the same as the rosary and many of the Christian faith, and the same as in the Islamic faith, that it's 108 beads, and it's the same number of beads. And so if you recite these prayers 108 times, you do one at a time, say, you say, I'm going to work on the first one, the altruistic motivation. And if you do that every day, a whole mile around, in about 4 or 5 days, you will have memorized that prayer.
That's
And then you can move on to the next one and do the same thing, and you will memorize that.
Okay, that's a good tip. I'll do that.
Yeah, it's very powerful to do that. You will enjoy that, and it will give you confidence in all the other things that we do. Okay, thank you for those questions. So does anybody have any questions about anything that we talked about last week? Last week was a lot of stuff. I actually watched the whole thing myself, and there was one correction I needed to make, and I sent a message out to people. I don't know whether you saw it, but that is that the life story of the Buddha was not included in the Jewel Ornamental Liberation. I was mistaken. It was actually Gampopa's life that was in there. But if you want a life story, I did send a link to a teaching that we gave in 2021 on the life story of the Buddha. So if you need that, if you didn't get it, I can send that out again to you. That might be the best way to get to hear the life story. But everything else, if I may say so, was pretty comprehensive and gave a pretty good table of contents of where it is that we're going in this cycle of Buddhism 101. So does anybody have any questions? Okay. So anytime you have questions, don't hesitate to turn on your microphone and speak up, or raise your hand, or do it on Zoom, raise your hand or whatever, and we will address those questions as quickly as we can. So just to review very quickly, that we're talking about the 9 yanas. And the 9 yanas, the yanas are vehicles. The word yana is a Sanskrit word that means a vehicle, and it is a pathway. It is a way in which we are trying to get from where we are now to whatever degree of enlightenment we can accomplish. So that pathway is along a path. And so we're saying that we're on the ground. From the ground, we get on the pathway, and then at the end of the pathway is our destination, or the result, or the fruition of our effort to be able to do that. And we hope that that's going to be some degree of Buddhahood, some degree of what we might call enlightenment or awakening. So what we're trying to do is to understand the mind, what our mind is. And so in all of these discussions, it's revolving around the idea of mind, what that is. So the basis of understanding the mind is recognizing the experiences of the mind. So it's not so much vicarious experience that we read in books, but it's actually entering into meditation. And the meditation is focusing the mind, is protecting the mind, is being able to remember and be able to familiarize ourselves with what the mind is in its purest essence. So a lot of the discussion that we have in these first basic yanas are trying to articulate just what the mind does, what the mind is, and so on. And then as we progress along the different yanas, we get deeper and deeper, more subtle, more subtle into the exploration of the mind and being able to have experience with the mind. So, of course, we have an ordinary mind in which we see things, we hear things, we touch, we all are ordinary everyday mind. But then there is this meditative mind. And this is what we're trying to awaken. And when we become more and more stable in that awakened mind, we see how it begins to interface with all this ordinary phenomenal stuff around us. And we begin to see it in a clearer light. We begin to understand it quite a bit more. So it's the experience of the mind is what we're trying to develop, and that is through the meditation. So we find that as we do that, that the subjects of the mind and the objects of the mind, the subject of the mind and the objects of the mind become the same, become indistinguishable between each other. And this is the oneness that we're trying to bring together. And this familiarization that we're having with the way the mind works in its dualistic nature, and then being able to bring that dualism onto the path and be able to see that it's all the same. It's all the same experience. So we call this awareness. There's a Sanskrit word that we use for this awareness, and we will refer to this from time to time. It's called Rigpa, R-I-G-P-A, is the awakeness of the mind, being able to recognize these subtleties of our mind. So we talked about that there were 4 paths. If you've got this sheet that I had sent you, that there was the path of renunciation, there was the path of purification, there's the path of transformation, and the path of self-liberation. So the self-liberation is the liberation from the notion that we are an independent and permanent self, as well as that which is around us, all this phenomenal nature, that it too is selfless. To be liberated from that self, the self of the self and the self of other, we call that. So this is something that we will come back to. And of course, that's the most subtle of all these teachings. But I think it's good to be able to know where it is that we're headed to be able to understand that this has a real goal to it, a real understanding to it. So we approach this first with renunciation. So what are we renouncing? We're renouncing our everyday confusions, our everyday attachments, our everyday pridefulness and greed and jealousies and so on like that. It's not that we are saying we are going to give all this stuff away and I'm not going to partake in this anymore, that I'm not going to read, I'm not going to study, I'm not going to drive my car, I'm not going to talk with people, I'm not going to eat, it's not like that. But it is like putting it into a balance with our meditation practices and finding that there is a practical way to do this. So we as Western people who have all these distractions, who have all these things, and many of these things are a great blessing to us. So we need to be able to bring them into our lives and allow ourselves to commingle them with the Rigpa, the awareness of our spirituality, and find a balance for all of that. So this renunciation is very important to us. So let me see here. I just want to check a couple notes. All right, so we talked quite a bit about this last week. And so we begin this journey through this renunciation path through what we call the Shravaka. The Shravaka is the hearer. The Srivaka is also known as the Arhat, the ideal, the one who becomes a perfect Srivaka is a Arhat. So you may have heard these names, you may have read these names before. So we're going to identify a little bit about this because everything kind of rests on this. This is a fundamental teaching that all the other things are based on. So if we don't have a firm grasp of what this Arhat, of what this Shravaka, what this hearer is, then all the other things are going to be a little bit shaky. So first off, we need to understand the motivation for someone to be on the path is very likely to be that they fear that if they don't, they're going to miss out on something, that they're going to get caught up in their confusions, get caught up in their emotions. And this fear may even be, when we die. What happens when we die? Many people want to engage in religious activity because they feel that there's going to be some kind of a healing, some kind of a redemption, that when they die, they're going to have a good death and not be caught up in all the stains of what they might have done, all the negativities that they might have done, and so on. So for a lot of people who enter into these conversations, into these thoughts, it's because of the fear of death. It's because of the fear that they're going to miss something if they don't do these things. And maybe that's where we are, and that's okay. We need to recognize that and say, okay, part of our process here is to overcome that fearfulness and make it fearlessness. And so there's a definite pathway to be able to do that. So this is part of this process, is recognizing those things that are holding us back from being free. That was one of the things that we emphasized last week, was the awareness of our freedom, the stability of our freedom. So what we're trying to do is to develop a critical thinking about how this happens, how this is. So there's a logic to this, and it should stand with with your investigation. It shouldn't be just based on faith alone. It should be faith in the investigation process that will show you the validity of what it is that we're exploring. So another motivation for someone who wants to be on the path as a Shravaka, as a hearer, would be to attain nirvana. We talk about this nirvana as being the antithesis of this ocean of suffering. So this ocean of suffering is like all this conditioned life that we have, and sometimes it's very beautiful and we very much enjoy it, but very quickly it can turn into suffering. Many different ways. Possessions we have break down, we get older, our bodies begin to deteriorate, people leave us either because they move on or maybe they pass away, things change. And so we're always in this ocean of suffering that is very difficult to be able to fathom. But when we realize that there is a pathway, and that the goal of the pathway is this liberation into what we call nirvana. So this nirvana, in many cases, some people might think of it as like a heaven, but it's a temporary heaven. And it's something that we have in this lifetime, that we attain nirvana in this lifetime. And this nirvana is like the rigpa that I talked about, the awareness of our circumstances what has caused the circumstances and what we can do to overcome those circumstances, to rise above those circumstances. So we want to achieve this nirvana. We want to raise ourselves out of this ocean of suffering, this samsara, into nirvana. Now, the Shravaka, or the hearer, the one who is engaging in these readings, who is engaging in these teachings, engaging in some practices and so on, is very selfishly doing this for their own benefit. They're not concerned with others. We talked about this last week. You know, the example was being in an airplane and putting the oxygen mask on yourself before you help someone else. So here, the important thing is to put the oxygen mask on, but then to help somebody else. The Srivaka may put the oxygen mask on and not pay attention to the other person next to them. So, but this is how we begin. You know, we have to look at ourselves and we have to work with ourselves first until we get a stability to then be able to work with others and so on. So the Shravaka is working with their own suffering, is another way of saying this, that they're working with their own suffering and they're processing the causes of their suffering. We're learning about the causes of suffering. What kind of suffering is there? So in the teachings, it said that the Buddha taught 84,000 emotions, or he taught the antidote for 84,000 emotions. So he met 84,000 people maybe. And each of those people came to him and said, well, here's my problem and so on. Can you help me? And so they say, well, okay, he helped 84,000 people with their unique situations. But what we find through the studies, through the masters and so on, that those 84,000 emotions can be subsumed down to 5 basic causes, or 5 poisons. So we like to call them poisons. So these poisons are ignorance, are desire, are attachment, are jealousy, and are greed. So these 5 poisons all together in all their myriad combinations make up these 84,000 emotions. So if we could eliminate our ignorance, if we could eliminate our attachments, if we could eliminate our greediness and so on, if we could eliminate these, then what we would be a pure being. We would be like a Buddha, what we might call a Buddha. But the reality of our being able to do that is very remote. That would be very difficult for most of us to do. So what we have to do is we have to embark in understanding how the mind is processing all these things around us, all this phenomenal nature that results in these 5 poisons, which then result in all these emotions. So we find that each of these 5 poisons has an antidote. So the antidote for ignorance is education. The antidote for desire is meditation. The antidote for anger is loving kindness. The antidote for greed is generosity. And the antidote for jealousy is activity, action. So that's a very simple way in being able to describe these, you know. So right now we're trying to do an introduction to this. In past Buddhism 101, we went into a great deal of detail about these things. So you can look at it, you can see it in the book that we used, The Jewel Ornament of Liberation. You can look at it in Learning Buddhism, which is another book that we use. You can look at it through YouTube, where we've recorded and saved all the Buddhism 101 teachings that we've had in the past. So you can get the basic information this way, and invariably in the future we will go through these things again too. So right now we're trying to give an introduction to these yanas. So as we embark on being this Shravaka, this hearer, who is now engaging in practice, who is trying to learn how to meditate, who has received instructions on meditation and is trying to do that, and they will go off by themselves. Maybe they'll go into, in the old country, they'll go into a cave, or they'll go into some kind of a hermitage or something like that. You know, for here in the West, you know, we might go on to retreats. We might go away for a weekend. We might go to a Dharma center that's nearby, that's offering a weekend retreat, and stay there and be able to practice meditation. Maybe we can expand that into a week-long retreat. Maybe you can do it with a group. Maybe you can do it independently by yourself, you know, with instruction from the teacher, and you can do that. Maybe you can stretch that into 2 weeks. And so there's plenty of opportunities, if you avail yourself of these, to go on these kinds of retreats, to start developing the technique for meditation. When we go away and do that, it really helps us to identify those obstacles that we have when we're sitting by ourselves in our rooms like we all are right now. So the goal is those retreats teach us how we can come back to our rooms and sit by ourselves and engage in these same practices that we would do on retreat, but now we would have the confidence to be able to see them through and be able to engage in those practices and begin to have some results in our own homes, in our own rooms, and so on. So that is our goal. One of the things that we're trying to understand is who we are, and to give a identification to that, we look at these issues of that we have a form and we have feeling, we have perceptions, and then we have mental formations or projections. We begin to anticipate, to have expectations. And then we have a consciousness of all of this. This all comes to our mind working is this consciousness at whatever level it might be. So in the Srivaka level, at this level here, we're developing the awareness of these 5, they're called skandhas. So these skandhas are translated from the Sanskrit into being heaps, H-E-A-P-S, heaps, just heaps. And it's like compounds. It's like if you just take a bunch of stuff and you just stack it up, here's a heap of form. Here's another heap of feeling. Here's another heap of perception. Here's another heap of mental formation. And here's a heap of consciousness. So this is like in the beginning, we approach this, we learn this as a sequence, but ultimately it becomes holonic. It becomes that they're all, interconnected with each other. So this is recognizing the self as it is, in order to be able to recognize that all these things are empty of their own nature, that they're just heaps of stuff. Our form is, we've got this body, and we look in the mirror, we see the body, we try and do whatever we can to look attractive enough that people will want to talk to us and that we can have friends and so on like that. And we take responsibility, we make sure that we're clean and all that kind of stuff. But then when we look a little bit closer, we look underneath and we see that, well, I've got the skin. And then if I look underneath the skin, I see all these tissues. I see all these, I see these muscles. I see these tendons. I can see the skeleton. I can see the bones. I can see all this stuff beneath us and so on, is all what this form is made up of. And if I look even deeper, I find that all these things are made up of molecules. And these molecules then are made up of atoms. And these atoms are made up of subatomic particles. And around all those subatomic particles is all this energy. And most all this stuff is just pure energy. The matter that is all these things that is in this space of energy is small compared to the energy, to the space itself, to the space around all this matter, this energy. So recognizing that we are made up of these compounds in this form and so on, and then we look around us and we see, well, here's this table and it's made of wood. And I look at the wood and I look closer to it and I see, well, it's made up of fibers. And I look deeper into the fibers and I find out, well, that's got molecules to it too. And then that's got atoms to it too, and subatomic, and all those atoms and those molecules and stuff is the same stuff that I'm made up of. And all the other stuff that we have, we find out that we're all the same. We're all made of the same thing, whether we're human beings, whether we're animals, whether we're insects, or we are all these different things of nature. These phenomenal things of nature are all the same. So this is recognizing the heap of form. And then when we are a human being, as if we're like born, when we're first born, if you can imagine when you're a baby, or maybe you've taken care of an infant, and when that infant is born, and the first thing it's doing, it's trying to feel itself and all this kind of stuff. And then it starts, recognizing sensation when the mother comes and rubs it and feeds the baby and bathes the baby and so on like that. So it starts developing an awareness of its feelings. And it can then begin to project things by saying, oh, you know what? Every time I start to cry, whatever this crying is, my mother comes over and starts rubbing my face and feeds me. Or she changes my diaper or something. Wow, this is great. I get attention when I cry. So this mental formation, or this perception now that I can now control my mother to some degree, starts to land on us. And it becomes part of our process of who we are. It becomes part of the skandhas of who we are. And then we start projecting that on other people. So if we saw our mother cry and we're a little bit older, we might get very sad and we might want to go over and help our mother because we know that there's something that's upsetting her. Maybe she's hungry, or maybe her diaper needs to be changed. So the idea is that we're projecting now the things that we have become aware of within ourselves. We're now able to project that onto others and have these mental formations that this is what's happening to other beings. I'm not alone. We're sharing this with other beings and so on. And then there's a consciousness that comes out of this, the interplay of all these different disparate things that begin to happen and so on. And we become aware of what's going on around us and what's going on around other people and so on. So there's this consciousness, there's awareness of this, and we begin to learn how to manipulate that. So these heaps, these aggregates, these compounds, our compounded nature is showing us that we're not just who we appear to be, that we're made up of all these individual things. And all these individual things are made up of atoms. And the atoms are made up of the subatomic particles, which all has all this space in them. So all this stuff, you see, is also in the midst of all this space. So we say that what this is, that all this is it's not inherently real. That all this is made up as all these composite things coming together. And then we recognize these composite things as appearances. The mind is seeing these things with our eyeballs, or we're touching it, we're hearing it, and so on. And we make these mental projections, with these mental formations. Oh, this is a ball, this is a table, this is a screen that I'm looking at, all these things that we agree that on how we identify these things and so on. But the essence of what all these things is that they are all part of this space. When it gets right down to it, we're down to this very, very subtle energy that is everywhere, this space that is everywhere. And this matter, all these material things are like floating in some connection patterns in all this space. So we begin to recognize that we are not real. We are temporarily real. We're temporarily real. We might have a life that's going to last us 50 years or 60 years or 70 years, 80 years, whatever we're blessed with, to be able to have this life, to be able to understand what it is to be a human being, what it is to be an animal, what it is to be alive, and so on like that. But ultimately, it is just the mind exploring all these possibilities and having this body in which to do all that. So this is all part of the experience of being a Srivaka, of being a hearer, someone who is taking all this knowledge and processing it, whether they hear it in teachings, whether they read it in books, or whether they contemplate it and they begin to develop an understanding on this on their own, which is very difficult. But at the very least, we take these teachings, we take these books, and then we do our own contemplation with it. And then it kind of moves along a lot faster. You know, when we have those interventions of teachers and books and everything, we learn much quicker and so on. And then ultimately, we have what we would call to be that meditation experience. That we go through all this learning, all this comprehension, all this contemplation and so on, and then we kind of exhaust it. And we just kind of sit back and we just allow this wisdom, this inner experience to rise up. And we catch a glimpse of that. All this up to now has been an intellectual experience. But this inner wisdom, this inner experience is what we call this spiritual experience. So we talk about this as being the little mind, the intellect, and we talk about this being the big mind. This meditative mind, this familiarization with not just what all the composite parts of all the skandhas that I just went through and talked about, and for all things around us, but then to rest that, but then to allow this inner wisdom, this inner mind to come up and experience that. So before we can really identify what all that is, we can have that experience and not have any words, not have any idea that we're doing that. And maybe there's been times when spontaneously you've had that kind of an experience. Maybe it was the kind of thing when you were hiking out in the woods, or maybe you were on a mountain and you had this epiphany of being one with nature or something like that. Or maybe you're out on a lake fishing, or just sitting on a boat or sitting on the dock or something like that. Or maybe you were surfing or something. Maybe you were playing music. Maybe you were making love. There's many different ways in which we can have that kind of a transcendent experience in our natural way of living. It doesn't require something extra special. We can have that. Maybe the first time you looked into your mother's eyes, or you looked into your child's eyes, or maybe it was your lover's eyes or something like that. And and you recognize something, but it's indescribable. You know, there might be this great rush of love, this feeling of love, this awareness of love, the feeling of compassion that you want to put your arms around that. So we can have that without recognizing what the essence of it is. But imagine what it is if we have some kind of training to be able to recognize what that is, to be able to identify some of the component parts of what it is that leads us to that, so that now we can direct ourselves to have that experience by ourselves, sitting on a cushion, or maybe sitting on a mountaintop or floating on the ocean, whatever, and be able to have that experience now through our control. So the Shravaka is exploring all this, is learning how to do this, is learning how to meditate, is learning what the component parts are of the body, of what the component parts are of the intellect, and now learning some of the component parts of what it is in the heart center, the spirit, this big mind, so that we can identify that within ourselves and to be able to communicate that with others. So this is all part of this hearer Shravaka level. But remember, they're doing this all for their own benefit. They're not doing it for the benefit of others. And that's okay at this point.
These experiences, an epiphany of being one with nature, or looking into a child's eyes, or are those glimpses of enlightenment?
It could be, yes, certainly, yeah. If you have that awareness of this transcendent quality of it, and does this love? Is there love that exudes from that? Reading the biographies of many of these practitioner, yogi, meditators of any tradition, whether they're Buddhist or Hindu or Christian or whatever. And many of them will talk about their meditative experiences, and they'll say, well, I really can't tell you what that experience was, but I can tell you that when I came out of that experience, all I had was this overwhelming sense of love for myself and for all beings, for life, for the human condition. So that's one way to be able to recognize that. Bodhicitta, loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. So we may recognize the love, we may recognize the joy, we may recognize the equanimity that, wow, everybody's my brother and sister. All of a sudden I realize that. And then the compassion for those who are suffering. For myself, when I'm suffering, when I'm not realizing that. And say, where have I been all my life that I didn't realize this? Why did I allow myself to suppress that? So this meditation experience is what leads us to that, you know, and it's a concentration of energy, our physical energy, our intellectual energy. Is this making sense, Ed? Is this answering your question?
Yeah, I think so.
So we talk, you know, that we've got our physical body, which has a lot of energy about it. We've got our intellect, which has a lot of energy about that. And our body is always twitching around. If you try and sit there on the cushion, and before too long, you're going to start twitching around and all that kind of stuff. And then your mind's going to start wandering and everything. So the first thing that we learn about meditation is to sit properly in a comfortable position in a proper way that we're taught to do that. And what we find, if we become proficient at this after a period of time, which takes time, you know, it's not going to take days or weeks or months, it might take years. But finally, we can sit in this quiet position for an hour, 2 hours, maybe 3 hours, whatever, you know. And so we're taking that energy and we're channeling it to our meditation. But our mind is still jumping around, thinking about, oh, what am I doing? I'm sitting here. Oh, I should be doing this. I got to make a phone call when I finish this. And you're flipping around all the thoughts that come into our mind that we follow, we track those thoughts and so on. And it's consuming energy to do that. But if we can focus, and if those thoughts are just going through our mind, because that's naturally what the brain does, is think. But if we're not paying attention to that anymore, it's like being in a movie theater and not watching the movie. The movie's still going on, but I'm not paying any attention to it. So if I can be in this meditative position and my brain is doing its thing, but I'm just allowing myself to focus one mindfully on maybe an object or on a mantra, or something I'm reciting, or something very, very, very simple that allows me to just bring my energy together, uniting with my physical energy. Now I've got those two energies that are being focused on my spirituality, on my big mind. And then things start changing, things start happening, things start opening up. So as that happens, you know, there can be these epiphanies, what we might call epiphanies, these awarenesses, wisdom come up. You know, in meditative jargon, we talk about that we go into a shamatha, calm abiding meditation, which is where you become virtually motionless. Your breathing becomes very, very soft, and that your mind becomes very, very open, very free, not paying attention to thoughts and so on. That's shamatha, calm abiding meditation. And then when these deep thoughts rise up, this is called vipassana meditation. Vipassana, V-I-P-A-S-A-N-A, something like that. It's V-A-P-A-S-H-Y-N-A, Vipassana. And this is insight meditation. We can't make the insight meditation happen. It has to happen on its own. So it's like when thoughts, all of a sudden a thought comes into your mind. Is it a mundane thought? Oh, I got to go buy some bread. Oh, I got to go put gas in the car. Oh, I got to make a phone call. Or is it a mundane thought, or rather is it a more of a transcendent thought that says, oh, I'm sitting here like the Buddha. I must be the Buddha. What does it mean to be the Buddha? The body of the Buddha? The speech of the Buddha? the mind of the Buddha. Let me think about those things instead of thinking about all the mundane stuff. So in that way, this thought comes up, and then maybe we do explore that thought that is worthy of our meditation. So in the beginning, it's like that. After a while, the mundane stuff just, kind of goes away. We don't pay any attention to it. And we just sit down and we just go right into a profound meditation. And maybe we do a practice to get there. We recite mantra and so on like that. There's a process to get into that. And then we get into that mind of our mind, what our mind is. We begin to see our mind. And in that mind, we're able to recognize all this phenomenal nature as it is, empty of its own nature. We begin to see ourselves empty of its own nature. And we recognize that all the things that we've been attaching to have all been temporary. Why have we been wasting our time thinking about attaching to temporary things? So with that, then we start saying, well, what is love? What is compassion? What is joy? What is this equanimity? What is this four vast immeasurable qualities of the holy enlightened mind? Let me bring that up. Let me get that stable in my life. So that is the work of the Arhat. When the Srivaka, the hearer, the ordinary meditator, gets to the level of an Arhat who has reached those kinds of levels, who now sees that they are the same as a Buddha. A Buddha is an awakened one. We talked about that last week. One who is aware of their circumstances, how they got there, why they got there, and how it is that they maneuver in that field of awareness. So the Arhat is not a Buddha, though, has approached the enlightenment of a Buddha, but has held back because of they have not been able to let go of past karma, past circumstances. When a thought comes up, they may be interrupted. When a karma comes up, they may be interrupted. They haven't been able to leave that behind. They've been able to do a lot of work, but they haven't been able to overcome that. So let me see here. That was a question that Tom had last week. We were talking about the Arhat. We look at these past karmas as impurities. There is an association here that we can use that is, in Buddhism, we talk about the alaya consciousness. There's this level of consciousness. There's 8 consciousnesses. And this alaya consciousness is the 8th of those levels. And it is the storehouse of our impurities or our purities, the things that we have attachment to or the things that we have aversions to. So this alaya consciousness is that stuff that's really very, 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 very subtle. In Christianity, in Hinduism, in Judaism, maybe in Islam, I'm not sure, but they talk about a soul, S-O-U-L. And the soul being this deep for lack of a better word, excuse me, but the essence of who we are, or something like that, this spiritual self, or something like that, that carries whatever good things that we've done and carries whatever bad things that we've done. And it's these good things or bad things that manifest as to whether or not we're going to be able to get into hell or heaven, that is going to be judged on our judgment day.
Who's going to judge?
Whoever, I don't know, that's
Buddhism doesn't insist on a higher being
well, that's what I'm trying to get to. And
Okay.
yes, and so in the Western traditions, they talk about this judgment day, and they talk about, well, is it going to be God? Is it going to be St. Peter? Who's going to be judging us? Right?
Right.
In Buddhism, they talk about the alaya consciousness, and it's we who are judging ourselves. It's we who are making a determination as to how it is that we are going to be when we get up off of our meditation cushion, or what it's going to be when we die and we go into this alaya consciousness and we're reborn again. How are we reborn? So the question becomes, well, how do I overcome that alaya consciousness? And is that alaya consciousness temporary? Is that just another of our figments of our imagination? Is that not another rationale? And in the West, is the soul not a rationale? Yes, Tom.
So the soul and the life force that determines whether we're alive or dead are two different things.
The life force becomes for lack of a better word now, becomes the entity in which the life force is part of. The life force, either the alaya consciousness was able to disappear. And then there's no need for the life force to be manifest. So the life force is dependent upon the alaya consciousness to bring it in.
So our life force is not ceasing, nor is it unceasing. It's only because of our impurities.
Well, to say that it's ceasing or unceasing gets into a little bit later. Because at this point here, we haven't laid the foundation for that discussion. But it's a good discussion. It's better to think now just about this idea of the soul, of the alaya consciousness, and this is what is holding us back. This is what is keeping us from becoming a Buddha. That I'm still attached to these past karmas. These karmas are actions, the results of our actions that are like embedded in this alaya consciousness, like stains on the soul that we have to deal with. Is this making sense? But if we can overcome, if we can let go of those karmas, if we can let go of that alaya consciousness, then that life force becomes the spacious life force of what we would call Buddha, which is ceaseless and unceasing. So it answers your question that way.
I'm missing this phrase, Alaya consciousness?
Yes, A-L-Y-A, Alaya. A-L-A-Y-A. And you can Google it.
A-L-A.
A-L-A-Y-A,
Got it.
Alaya.
All right. And I'm sorry to, what is, define that for me again, or,
The storehouse consciousness.
okay. All right. I had storehouse written down. I didn't have these things linked properly. Okay.
So it's the storehouse consciousness, like the soul. In the West, they would talk about the soul.
Okay. Thank you.
Here, Ed, I gotta explanate, what is it? The alaya is the basis and investigator of all our mental activities, where we plant our karmic seed, also called the storehouse consciousness, as a ground of our experience of dualistic reality. Alaya is marked by the basic ignorance, which can be transformed into wisdom through advanced meditational techniques.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
So what led us to this part of the discussion was the idea of the Arhat. Why is the Arhat not a Buddha? And the Arhat is not a Buddha because the Arhat has a connection, hasn't let go of the connection to past impurities, which are in the alaya consciousness. So remember, going back to our chart here, that we're in the path of renunciation, but then the next part, the next path was purification, where we engage with that. Okay, any other comments about this? Is this making some sense?
I have a question about meditation.
Sure.
As a beginner trying to cultivate a meditation practice, how often is a good sort of starting? Because I try to do 5 or 10 minutes in the mornings before work, but I feel like it's probably not enough.
Well, good. Okay. Well, I guess it's a question of how much time you can devote to that. But the thing that, I would advise you is to first, you have to set your intention for your meditation. So let's say you can afford 15 or 20 minutes. Okay. So the first few minutes you go through and you read 2 or 3 of these prayers to set your meditation. You do that every day. And then you sit quietly in the meditation position and you contemplate the meaning of those prayers. And you contemplate the meaning till that contemplation kind of exhausts itself. And then you're sitting there in this position, and then you might have this kind of transcendent awareness. Something may come up, this peace may come up. It may only last for a moment. And it may be at the very end of that period of time before you come out of, this, you say, okay, I'm going to have this meditation for 10 minutes. And at the very end, the last, 15 seconds or so, you get this awareness, this epiphany. But then it's time to go. And then you read a dedication prayer. So on page 21 or page 20, there's a dedication prayer. So part of the process is recognizing that there's 3 elements. There is setting your intention. There is doing the practice. In this case, we're talking about a meditation. And then the third part is the dedication for the benefit of others. What we're trying to do is to overcome our ego. We're trying to let go of the self. So all these things are techniques to help us to do that. They're mind trainings to help us to do that. So that's a short way of saying that if you can do that every day, that's really great. If you do it once every other day, you do it once a week or something, there's going to be lesser and lesser benefit to it. But if you can establish a routine in that, and then you find that you like it, I want that to grow. I want to do more. Let me ask Lance what else I can do.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it becomes now a half hour, and maybe that becomes 45 minutes, and then that becomes an hour, and you find yourself getting up earlier in the day so that you can do your meditation, or maybe you do it before you go to bed, or maybe when you come home from work or something like that. You find a suitable routine time of day to do it. So that's a short way of explaining what to do. If you'd like to have, a conversation, we can make a time together and we could talk more detail about this.
Okay, thank you.
All right, you're welcome. But does that generally answer the question for you?
Yeah, because my next question was going to be, what should I do when meditating? Because mostly what I've been doing is just sort of breathing and trying to get comfortable, like sitting with myself, I guess. But having this book is going to be very helpful.
Yes, that's exactly right. And that's the beginning part, is to learn these prayers and think about what they are saying, why they are saying it, and how it is that we are going to integrate that into our lives. So what, why, and how. And you can take notes in here, you can write things down, and that's really good. When you do, wherever you do your meditation, have a piece of paper and have a pen or a pencil nearby, because you may find that in those few minutes, ideas come up that you don't want to forget. And you don't want to chase after those ideas. Say, oh, that idea came up. I don't know the answer to it. I need to ask somebody, or I need to look it up. But I want to get back to just being quiet. I just want to get back to my meditation. So write it down. Or maybe it is something, mundane. Say, oh, I forgot. I got to call somebody. Let me write down to remind myself to call. So that way you're not sitting there trying to meditate, but thinking, I got to call. What's their phone number? I got to call, So we call that chasing after thoughts.
Well, maybe this is chasing too, and where we don't have time to go, but you speak of meditation being the effort to transcend ego.
Yes.
Do we want to transcend all? Is ego a bad thing? I mean, or is it just a bad thing in meditation itself, or is it a bad thing in the world?
Well, we can't annihilate the ego.
Do we want to?
Well, are we being controlled by our ego?
Well, yeah, we want to annihilate that control.
Can we control so then can we control the ego?
Right.
So to be able to do that, we've got to go, doing this process is what helps us to be able to do it, because what we're doing for that time on the cushion, we're separating ourselves from the ego.
Okay.
And then when we come back, it's time to get up off the cushion, now we're going to assign the ego a new job.
All right. Okay. Thank you for that. That's clarifying.
So in many ways, we talk about this as when we sit down, we're one person. We got a certain mindset and everything, but then we go through this process for 15 or 20 minutes. And then when we finish that and get off the cushion, now we're like reborn a different person. If we had a really good meditation, that we've now been reborn, and now we're giving our ego a new job to do.
Well, I like that. Thank you.
So we got to be willing to change, and accept that there are systems. This is one of many systems to be able to do that. But the benefit of this system is it's very well articulated, and it's very well supported by the Sangha, by brothers and sisters. You know, if you were to choose another system, maybe you get to see somebody once a week or once every 2 weeks or once a month or whatever. It's only embedded in a book or something. But this has a closer proximity for support if you avail yourself of it. You know, part of the process is asking questions, is asking for that support. Okay. Anybody want to take a short break? Stand up, stretch, take a drink of water or something like that? Okay, can I continue, or is this enough for tonight?
Where is everybody?
I don't know. They all said they were going to be here.
Yeah, I know they did. Yeah.
Well, I know Michael's sick, so that I know.
Michael's sick.
And Zara wigged out. Yeah, Michael's got COVID.
Oh, he does.
Yeah, he wrote me this morning.
Oh, my.
So I asked how bad it was. He didn't reply. I know he had all his shots.
Yeah. Yep.
I was late because I was chewing out my son.
Mm. The one that's the fighter?
No, the one that's in going to grad school.
Oh.
To live within your means.
Oh, he was asking for money again.
Live beneath your means.
Yes. Yes. Necessary. Yes. How did he respond to that?
But Dad. Oh man.
Did you both transcend your egos?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did. Way, way up there. I was like, one day you'll have children.
It changes things.
All right. So can we get back to this? Okay. So I introduced some new terms tonight. You know, we talked about Rigpa. We talked about the Shravaka. We talked about the 5 poisons, the 5 antidotes. We talked about samsara and nirvana. So these are things that I think it behooves us all to become familiar with and be able to write a short sentence about a description for each one of these things. And if you don't have that ability right now, then it behooves you to look into it. You know, you can Google these things. Google's gotten so good now, especially with these Buddhist terms and so on, that you Google any one of these things and all kinds of things will come up and it'll be a healthy read for you. If you've got the Jewel Ornamental Liberation, these things are in the Jewel Ornamental Liberation. The Jewel Ornamental Liberation is the main textbook that we use, that is called the Lam Rim text. It's the stages of the path, this book. So I don't know if you're interested, you might want to get a copy of that. And
I ordered one after our last meeting.
Oh, great. All right. Well, terrific. It is a textbook. It is dry, you know, but, and I will send you, when you get that book, remind me, and I'll send you an outline that I use and is very helpful in being able to quickly reference stuff that's in that book and so on. So we've got all these learning tools to help us with this.
Hey, Lance, you had mentioned the 5 skandhas.
Yes.
Now, in the 101 book that you send out is the Heart Sutra, where it gives all the 5 skandhas, correct?
Oh, yes, it does. Yeah, but I think we'll go there another time. If you'll remind me about that another time, I think that would be good.
But yeah, that was really nice that you mentioned the 5 skandhas tonight.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for reminding me about the Heart Sutra, because, you know, and just to underscore that point, we talk a lot about the academics and maybe not enough time about the practice. So the practices are these prayers, reciting these prayers and so on. So Anna, if you develop a meditation routine, then part of that eventually would become reciting the Heart Sutra, which is in this book is, and I know that Ed has a copy of this too, but it's on pages 14, 15, 16, and 17. If you want to sneak ahead and take a look at that. So these books are ancient wisdom. I mean, the Jewel Ornament of Liberation is about 1,000 years old. And the translator who did this is a great Kempo, a great scholastic who translated it line by line, word by word into the English so we can understand it. And he kept his analysis out of it in the main body of the text. But in this book, in the front part are the translator's introduction for each chapter, where he gives his analysis, which is great. So Ed, I know you've had this book for quite a while. And I don't know, do you have this book, Ed? Did you ever purchase this book? No? Okay. Well, if you want to, it's great. All right, so I want to move ahead. I want to move to the next. So we talked about the Srivaka. The Srivaka Yana, going back to this first of the Yanas. So the first one was the Srivaka Yana. Now the second one is the Pratyekabuddha Yana. So Pratyekabuddha means the independent liberation. Liberation of themselves is what they are interested in. Their own individual liberation. So they're not interested in somebody else. They're interested in theirs. The Pratyekabuddha is an arhat kind of who has maybe discovered these things by themselves, or that they've kept their teachers anonymous, that they don't give credit to their teachers. They're selfishly holding on to whatever wisdom, whatever experiences, and they might well have had some very profound experiences. They're holding on to that as their own, rather than saying, well, I learned this from my teachers and I'm sharing this with you and so on like that. And they tend to be by themselves. They're also called solitary realizers, that they have come to a degree of realization, but they prefer to keep to themselves. And maybe one reason is because there is this awareness that they haven't really accomplished all that they need to accomplish, and they'll be exposed for their weak knowledge, for their weak merit, if they go into the village and start teaching. And so they hold on to what they have, and they sit there thinking all prideful to themselves, oh, how great I am. But meanwhile, it hasn't been tested, and they don't want to engage in the testing. So these are qualities or characteristics, I should say, of the Pratyekabuddha. So he's arrogant. He conceals his masters, what his path has been, and he prefers to be alone. So this is the individual liberation. He may have insight, like I said. He's going to have, we talked about that Vipassana meditation. Talked about, shamatha. Those are two more terms that we talked about tonight. We talked about shamatha, calm abiding meditation, and we talked about insight, Vipassana meditation. So those are two more terms. So he's selfishly holding all that for himself. So there's an interesting, I like these analogies. I think they're good to remember things. They go through a process of meditation and so on, receiving the teachings and so on, and doing all these things. And they have a conduct, the way they behave in doing this and so on. And we've established that they're solitary realizers and so on. But there's a result to all this. So the result for the Pratyekabuddha goes like this. I gotta read this. It says, as their fruition, their result, those with sharper faculties attain the level of a rhinoceros-like Pratyekabuddha, a rhinoceros-like Pratyekabuddha, or a Pratyekabuddha arhat, Pratyekabuddha arhat, like a rhinoceros. But those with duller capacities, duller facilities, become parrot-like Pratyekabuddha arhats, become like parrots. So these two analogies, one being like a rhinoceros, the other being like a parrot, what does this mean? So the lesser one, the parrot, is squawking like in a repetitive group. So if you've ever been in an aviary with a bunch of birds and so on, you hear that they're always chattering. Da, 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 da. They're chattering and everything. And the parrots have the ability to just repeat over and over again. If they've learned some phrase or something like that, they just repeat it over and over and over again. So they're just parroting what they've learned. It really hasn't sunk in. They really don't understand. The rhinoceros is independent, is a solitary being. The parrots live in groups, but the rhinoceros is independent, very independent. They stay by themselves. So this is thinking about, well, maybe the arhats might be more like the parrots, and then the solitary realizers might be more like the rhinoceros. So I just think those are interesting analogies. Okay, we lost Ed. What happened? Okay, you got a phone call? Oh, okay. All right, any questions? Okay. Well, I'm just going to go through a short introduction in this because I know it's going to take more than, we have only got 30 minutes left for this particular session. And plus it's important, so I want to be able to include more people in it. Not that we're not important now, but I know that other people will, glad that we waited to be able to talk about the next part, which is the Bodhisattva Yana. The Bodhisattva is a wholly enlightened being. So the word Bodhi means enlightenment, Sat means a being, and Va means a holy being. So it's the holy being of enlightenment is what a Bodhisattva is. So we go through these stages to become a Bodhisattva, and the Bodhisattva is a progressive state that goes through to become Buddha. So this is part of the human experience. If we are engaging in this spiritual path to become Buddha. So the Bodhisattva and all the Buddhas, all the enlightened beings have bodhicitta, which is the wholly enlightened mind. So Bodhi being the enlightenment, and Cheetah meaning the heart mind. So so all these beings have that. We have it too, but it's very easily blocked up. very easily close up. And what we're doing is we're trying to open up those blockages, those obscurations. And as we do that, as we develop our practices, as we develop our meditation, we begin to have these glimpses where light comes shining through these blockages. If you can visualize, it's all blocked up like this, and then light comes popping through. So it's like glimpses of this true nature, of this Buddha nature that we all have. And when we can loosen up those obstacles, then that holy enlightened mind, the bodhicitta, comes popping through. So that's what we're trying to do. So I'm glad you're back.
Yeah, I've got an interruption, so I'm going to have to leave, but I didn't mean to leave so abruptly. That just happened.
All right. Are you with us for the next few minutes?
I can be, but I'm probably going to have to leave before 9 o'clock again.
All right. Well, then maybe we'll just leave our conversation here. And because the next part is to talk about the Bodhisattva Yana. We just explained the Shravaka and the Pratyekabuddha. And in this path of renunciation is the Bodhisattva. So without getting too deep in it and thinking about we got to go and everything, we'll call it a night and we'll start again next time. So
I'm sorry, I just have a phone call that means I have to leap into action here.
Understood.
Yeah.
Okay, so next week I'm not likely to be here because I'm supposed to be going on retreat tomorrow, but my car developed a problem over the weekend, and I don't know if I can get it in the shop in time to get it fixed for a 1,000-mile trip. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet.
Well, good luck.
Yeah, thanks.
Life intervenes.
What's that? Yes, that's great. Is that your phone call?
Again, yeah, I'm sorry. This is just chaos.
All right, well, go ahead, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right, take care.
All right. Anna, do you have any other questions or comments? Or Tom, do you have anything you want to talk about?
I don't have any more questions. I'm very grateful to all of the knowledge that you've shared. I feel like I've learned more in these past 2 sessions than I did reading a lot of different books, especially this prayer book.
Okay, great. All right, very good. Well, thank you. And I made myself a note to send you those audio files.
I don't have your email address.
Oh,
Can I write mine in the chat?
I'll tell you what. Let me write it down right now. Tell me what it is.
It's exactly the way my name is: last name, period, first name.
Anna.
Yep. So Schroeder, period, Anna.
Spell Schroeder.
SCHROEDER, period, ANNA 27 @gmail.com.
So it's Anna Schroeder, AMA 27.
ANNA.
Oh, Anna.
Yep. So the entire email is Schroeder.Anna27.
Oh, okay. Schroeder.Anna27 @gmail.com.
Yeah, that's it.
All right, very good. Thank you. All right, yeah, I'll send you that. All right, so let's do our dedication. Does anybody else have anything else? So let's go to the dedication prayer on page 21 and 22. Continues on page 22. So this is a dedication prayer that was written more than 800 years ago by the founder of our lineage, which is called the Drikung Kagyu lineage. So this prayer is very comprehensive. So as we recite this, I think you'll understand more of the meaning. There's probably some words here that you won't recognize that we can talk about another time, but some words you will recognize because that's what we've been talking about tonight. So we begin. Glorious, holy, venerable, kind root and precious, glorious, holy, venerable, precious, kind root and lineage lamas, divine assembly of yidams and assemblies of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Yogins, Yoginis, and Dakinis dwelling in the 10 directions, please hear my prayer. May the virtues collected in the 3 times by myself and all sentient beings in samsara and nirvana and the innate word of virtue not result in the 8 worldly concerns, the 4 causes of samsara, or rebirth as a Shravaka or Pratyekabuddha. May all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me and mine, obstructors who harm, misleading Maras and the hordes of demons, experience happiness, be separated from suffering, and swiftly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. By the power of this vast root of virtue, may I benefit all beings through my body, speech, and mind. May the afflictions of desire, hatred, ignorance, arrogance, and jealousy not arise in my mind. May attachment to fame, reputation, wealth, honor, and concern for this life not arise for even a moment. May my mind stream be moistened by loving kindness, compassion, and bodhicitta, and through that, may I become a spiritual master with good qualities equal to the infinity of space. May I gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra in this very life. May the torment of suffering not arise even at the time of my death. May I not die with negative thoughts. May I not die confused by wrong view. May I not experience an untimely death. May I die joyfully and happily in the great luminosity of the mind as such and the pervading clarity of Dharmata. May I, in any case, gain the supreme attainment of Mahamudra at the time of death or in the bardo. Om, Ah, Hum. Om, Ah, Hum. Om, Ah, Hum. May my body, speech, and mind become inseparable with the body, speech, and mind of all the enlightened ones for the benefit of all sentient beings. Thank you. Okay, so I'll add you to the list. I'll let everybody. Do you use WhatsApp? Are you familiar with WhatsApp, Anna?
I have a WhatsApp.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Good. Can I have your phone number?
Yes.
What is that?
703-282-0742.
All right, because that's a very convenient way for us to communicate very easily. So I'll add you to our Buddhism 101 group for that too.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much. We'll be in touch. Tom?
Hey, thank you so much, Lance. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you, brother.
Have a lovely night.
Okay, have a good night.
Good night.
Did you get a rest in, Tom?
No, like I said, I was chewing out my
Oh, you were
son.
chewing out your son.
Yeah. So yeah, it's okay. Now, so you said you haven't had a chance to get a hold of any, well, no one's open today, right? So you can have checked with any mechanics or anything, right?
I'm only going to take it to the dealer.
Oh, okay. Well, if you go early enough, they should be able to get it done.
Well, they work by appointment, and all the appointments for Monday or Tuesday, rather, were taken up because you can go online and get an appointment.
Ah.
So I'm going to go there and plead my case, and maybe they'll help me out, you know?
Yeah, they should.
Because I like to go, you know, I promised I was going to go and I want to go and all that. But if they don't get it in tomorrow, I'll go on Wednesday, but I won't go on Thursday.
Well, Wednesday is when it kicks off, right?
Wednesday's when it starts, yes.
Yeah, so it's Wednesday and Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Yeah, so if I miss the first day, that won't be so bad.
Mhm.
But I'm not going to miss 2 days and then have to drive and drive back again. So
Yeah, 'cause it's just a wheel bearing, right?
yeah,
Yeah, I mean that's not a big deal, really.
well, they make a bigger deal out of it. They want to do a 4-wheel alignment.
I know,
Another $125.
I know.
I just had one wheel bearing done a couple of months ago.
Oh, okay.
When I got back from
Kentucky?
Kentucky, I had to have it.
Yeah, I have a tendency whenever I get something done on one side, I try to do both at the same time.
Well, me too, but I think it wound up being like $600.
Yeah, it's not cheap. It's not cheap.
So I didn't want to, I didn't want to spend $1,200. And
Yeah.
the advisor said, well, you may not have a problem, but may not, woulda, shoulda, coulda, woulda, huh?
Yeah, but like I said, I mean, you're welcome to use the Toyota if you want.
Oh, well, thanks. No, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, really.
But I looked up my car, and my car has held its value tremendous.
Sure.
And the reports are that there's a good likelihood I get 250,000 miles on my car.
Yeah, I mean, if you keep it, keep it maintained, that's the thing, just keep it maintained,
Yeah, I got 122 on it now. So I just, I don't want to give it up and buy a new car
Oh no, you don't want payments, man. No, that's
right
not
now
work.
we're getting the house worked on. I got all this stuff that I just
okay.
committed to, so.
Have they started the work yet, or are they going to
No.
start when you get back?
When I get back.
Oh man. Yeah.
We'll go to the movies.
They're doing the roof and the siding, right?
Yes.
Oh man, yeah.
3-4 days, man.
Oh, that's intense too. I mean, you're gonna have like 4, 5, 6 guys that are just banging away. Yeah, just no, but look at it afterwards. It's gonna be beautiful, huh? Yeah.
I hope so.
Okay, brother. But like I said, man, if I can do anything to help you out,
I appreciate it.
okay.
Thank you so
really,
much.
really.
Appreciate it.
No problem, man.
All right. Well, then I'll talk to you sometime later in the week.
Okay. I hope everything goes well.
Okay. Be cool.
Hey, you too. Take care.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Bye.
Bye-bye.